The maintenance tunnels beneath Kepler Station's main spaceport hummed with the constant vibration of massive fusion engines cycling through their startup sequences. Marcus Chen had grown accustomed to the sound over his 3 years working as a systems engineer in the bowels of humanity's largest deep space trading hub. The rhythmic thrum had become a kind of meditation for him, drowning out the phantom sounds of artillery fire that still echoed in his dreams from the Centauri liberation campaign. At 34, Marcus carried the weight of 2 wars in his shoulders and the careful precision of a man who had learned that small mistakes could kill entire squads. His prosthetic left arm moved with fluid mechanical grace as he navigated the maze of conduits and service corridors, running his scheduled inspection of the atmospheric recycling systems. The arm was military grade, far superior to civilian models, but it served as a constant reminder of the day he had chosen to stay behind and hold the line while his unit evacuated civilians from New Shanghai Colony. The weak man he had been before the war would have run. The weak man would have found an excuse, a reason to leave others to die while he preserved his own life. That weakness had died in the ruins of New Shanghai, incinerated along with his flesh and bone arm when the plasma grenade had detonated too close. What emerged from the medical bay months later was something harder, more purposeful. Something that understood that true strength came not from avoiding destruction, but from choosing what to sacrifice and what to preserve. It was this philosophy that had led him to take a job in the maintenance levels of Kepler Station. While other veterans sought glory in the merchant marine or lucrative positions with the military contractors, Marcus found purpose in keeping the vital systems running that allowed thousands of beings to live and work in the cold vacuum of space. Every properly calibrated atmospheric processor meant children could breathe safely. Every perfectly maintained gravity generator meant families could walk together without floating away. It was humble work, invisible work, but it was work that mattered. The service corridor branched ahead, and Marcus took the left path toward Section C7, where thermal readings had indicated a potential coolant leak. His footsteps echoed hollowly in the narrow space, mixing with the omnipresent hum of machinery. The station was entering its night cycle, and most of the maintenance crews had finished their shifts hours ago. Marcus preferred working alone during these quiet periods, when the only company was the honest sound of machines doing their jobs. He was 20 meters into Section C7 when he heard a sound that didn't belong in the mechanical symphony of the station. It was organic, rhythmic, almost musical. Someone was humming. Marcus stopped, his enhanced hearing straining to isolate the sound. It was coming from up ahead, somewhere near the junction with the waste reclamation systems. The melody was unfamiliar, not following any human tonal patterns he recognized. The notes seemed to flow in quarter tones and half-steps that suggested a different evolutionary approach to music, possibly from one of the non-human species that frequented the station. Curiosity overrode protocol. Marcus should have contacted security and reported an unauthorized presence in the maintenance areas. Instead, he moved forward carefully, his prosthetic arm automatically adjusting its grip sensors as his body prepared for potential conflict. Years of military training didn't simply disappear because he had traded his rifle for a diagnostic scanner. The humming grew clearer as he approached the junction. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, filled with a sadness that seemed to resonate in the metal walls around him. It spoke of longing, of loss, of hope maintained against impossible odds. Marcus found himself slowing his approach, reluctant to disturb whatever being was creating such beautiful music in the darkness. The junction opened into a wider maintenance chamber, filled with the bulk of 3 massive waste reclamation units. Emergency lighting cast long shadows between the machinery, creating a maze of dark and light. The humming was coming from behind the central unit, where a small alcove formed between 2 support struts. Marcus moved around the machinery carefully, his engineering scanner held ready but not activated. As he rounded the corner of the central unit, he stopped completely, his breath catching in his throat. In the alcove, sitting cross-legged on a makeshift bed of maintenance tarps and discarded insulation material, was a child. She appeared to be perhaps 10 or 11 years old, though her non-human physiology made precise age assessment difficult. Her skin had a faint blue-green tint that seemed to shift in the emergency lighting, and delicate ridges ran along her temples and down the sides of her neck. Her hair was long and silver, braided with small pieces of what looked like scavenged metal and wire. But it was her eyes that made Marcus's heart clench. They were completely white, clouded over with a milky opacity that spoke of congenital blindness. She sat facing the wall, her head tilted slightly as if listening to something beyond human perception. Her small hands moved through the air in front of her as she hummed, tracing patterns that seemed to follow the melody she created. She was clearly not human, but she was undeniably a child. A blind, alien child living in the maintenance tunnels of Kepler Station, apparently alone and forgotten. Marcus stood frozen, his mind racing through the implications. How long had she been here? How was she surviving? Where were her parents, her family, her people? The Kepler Station census records included dozens of non-human species, but he couldn't immediately identify which one she might belong to. More importantly, how had a child ended up abandoned in the deepest levels of the station's infrastructure? The girl's humming stopped suddenly. Her head turned toward him with the uncanny precision of someone who navigated the world through hearing and other enhanced senses. Her clouded eyes fixed on his position with disturbing accuracy. "I know you're there," she said in accented Standard Galactic. Her voice was small and clear, with an unusual harmonic quality that suggested her species had evolved different vocal structures than humans. "You've been listening for several minutes. Your breathing changed when you saw me." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks, embarrassed to have been caught spying. He stepped forward slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. I'm Marcus. I work maintenance for the station. I heard you humming and wanted to make sure you were safe." The girl tilted her head again, and Marcus realized she was evaluating him through senses he couldn't fully understand. After a long moment, she nodded slowly. "My name is Zara. I am safe enough, for now. Are you going to report me to station security?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. The trust implicit in her asking, the resignation in her young voice that suggested she had already prepared for betrayal, awakened something fierce and protective in his chest. "No," he said immediately. "I'm not going to report you. But I need to understand what's happening here. How long have you been living down here?" Zara's small shoulders relaxed slightly. "I have been here for 47 days. My family was traveling on a merchant vessel that docked for repairs. There was an accident. An explosion in the ship's engineering section." Her voice became smaller. "Everyone died except me. Station security processed me as a survivor, but when they couldn't identify my species or locate any relatives, I was scheduled for transfer to a refugee facility on one of the outer colonies." Marcus felt his jaw clench. The outer colony refugee facilities were notorious for their poor conditions and high mortality rates, particularly for non-human children. They were little more than warehouses for beings that the core worlds didn't want to deal with. What happened? Why didn't the transfer go through? I ran. Zara's hands twisted in her lap. The night before the transport was scheduled to leave, I slipped out of the temporary housing unit they had assigned me. I know the station by sound and vibration now. I can feel the pattern of the machinery, the way the air moves through the circulation systems. I found my way down here, where it's warm and quiet and no one comes looking." The implications crashed over Marcus like a cold wave. This child had been living alone in the maintenance tunnels for over 6 weeks, scavenging for food and water, sleeping on improvised bedding in the mechanical spaces beneath one of the galaxy's busiest spaceports. She had survived through ingenuity, determination, and a level of courage that most adults would never possess. "How have you been eating?" he asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Zara gestured toward a corner of her alcove where Marcus could now see a small collection of food containers and water bottles. There are disposal units throughout this section where people throw away meals that are still partially good. I have learned which areas have the best salvage opportunities. The waste reclamation systems also purify water that I can access through maintenance points. She was describing a subsistence existence that would have broken most adults, delivered in the matter-of-fact tone of someone who had simply adapted to reality. Marcus felt something twist in his stomach as he imagined this small, blind child crawling through waste disposal areas in the dark, searching for enough nutrition to survive another day. Zara, he said carefully, what's your species? If I could identify your people, maybe I could find someone who could help you properly. The girl's expression grew guarded. I am Vorthak. My family was part of a research expedition studying gravitational anomalies in the outer systems. We were scientists, explorers. My people value knowledge and discovery above most things. Her voice dropped. There are very few Vorthak in this sector of space. Most of our population remains in the home systems, far from human space. Marcus's enhanced memory searched through his military briefings and cultural training, but the name Vorthak didn't trigger any immediate recognition. If they were a deep space species with limited contact with human space, it explained why station security had been unable to locate relatives or cultural liaisons. It also meant that Zara was likely the only member of her species within several dozen light-years. The research expedition, he prompted gently. Were there other ships? Other families? Zara shook her head sadly. Our ship was independent. My parents preferred to work alone, to pursue their investigations without the politics of larger expeditions. They said that important discoveries come from looking where others don't think to search. She paused, her clouded eyes seeming to focus on something beyond the walls. I think they found something important before the accident. Something in the gravitational data that excited them. But the ship's computers were destroyed in the explosion. Marcus found himself kneeling without conscious decision, bringing himself closer to the girl's eye level. His prosthetic arm whirred softly as he adjusted his position. Zara, you can't stay down here indefinitely. It's not safe, and it's not a life for anyone, especially not for someone your age. There has to be another solution. What solution? The question came out sharper than Marcus expected, revealing the steel beneath the girl's careful politeness. Station security will transfer me to a refugee facility where I will be one of thousands of displaced beings warehoused until I come of age and can be expelled to find my own way. I have researched the outcomes for unaccompanied minors in the outer colony facilities. The mortality rate is 37%, higher for non-human children, even higher for those with disabilities. The clinical precision with which she recited the statistics hit Marcus like a slap. This child had not run away on impulse or emotion. She had researched her options, calculated her odds, and made a rational decision that living alone in the maintenance tunnels offered better survival prospects than the official refugee system. There has to be something else, he said, though even as the words left his mouth, he wasn't sure what that something might be. Someone who could take responsibility for you, maybe help you find other Vorthak or Mr. Marcus, Zara interrupted gently. I appreciate your concern, but I have had 47 days to consider my options. I have accessed the station's databases through maintenance terminals and researched every possible alternative. There are no Vorthak diplomatic representatives in human space. There are no Vorthak communities, families, or individuals registered in this sector. The refugee systems are designed for short-term processing, not long-term care. Private adoption of non-human children by human families is legally complicated and extremely rare. She had done her homework. This blind child, living in the dark spaces beneath the station, had somehow managed to access databases and conduct research that would have challenged most adults. Marcus felt a mixture of admiration and heartbreak as he realized the depth of intelligence and resourcefulness she had applied to her impossible situation. So you decided to disappear, he said. I decided to survive, Zara corrected. Down here, I control my environment. I know where to find food, water, warmth, safety. I know the patterns of the maintenance shifts and security patrols. I know which areas are monitored and which are forgotten. I have been learning the station systems by listening, by feeling, by understanding how everything connects. Her small hands gestured around them. This is not the life I would have chosen, but it is a life that belongs to me. Marcus sat back on his heels, studying this remarkable child who had survived circumstances that would have destroyed most beings twice her age. There was something familiar in her words, in the quiet determination that underlaid her resignation to an impossible situation. It reminded him of the conversations he had had with himself in the medical bay after losing his arm, when he had faced the choice between accepting his limitations or finding a way to become stronger despite them. The weak man accepts what life gives him. The strong man decides what life owes him. What if there was another option, he heard himself saying. Something you haven't considered yet? Zara's head tilted with interest. What do you mean? Marcus's mind was racing, connecting possibilities he hadn't fully examined. What if someone took responsibility for you? Not adoption, necessarily, but guardianship. Someone with station residency credentials and the authority to provide for your basic needs while we figure out a longer-term solution. You're suggesting that you would become my guardian, Zara said with startling directness. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Marcus hadn't quite articulated the thought to himself, but, hearing it spoken aloud, he realized that was exactly what he was suggesting. It was insane. He was a single veteran with a demanding job and his own psychological baggage to carry. He knew nothing about raising children, even less about raising non-human children, and absolutely nothing about the specific needs of a blind Vortak child. It was also the right thing to do. I'm suggesting that maybe we could figure it out together, he said carefully. I have a decent apartment in the residential section. I have steady employment and station citizenship credentials. I have experience adapting to difficult circumstances. He gestured to his prosthetic arm. And I understand something about refusing to let circumstances define what you're capable of achieving. Zara was quiet for a long time, her clouded eyes seeming to study his face despite her blindness. Marcus realized she was probably evaluating him through whatever enhanced senses her species possessed, reading cues in his voice, his breathing, his scent, the subtle sounds of his clothing and cybernetics. Why would you do this? She asked finally. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Taking responsibility for a non-human child would complicate your life significantly. It was a fair question, and Marcus found himself searching for an answer that went beyond simple compassion. There was something deeper driving his offer, something connected to the philosophy that had rebuilt him after his military service. Because, he said slowly, a long time ago I learned that the weak part of yourself is the part that looks for excuses not to do what's right. The part that calculates personal cost instead of focusing on what needs to be done. He looked around the makeshift shelter she had created in the mechanical darkness. You've been surviving down here for 47 days because you refused to let circumstances destroy you. That takes a kind of strength that most adults never develop. Maybe I could learn something from that. Zara's expression softened, and, for the first time since he had discovered her, she looked like what she was, a child who had been forced to be strong for too long. If I agreed to this, she said carefully, what would happen? How would you explain my presence to station authorities? Marcus felt his engineering mind shift into problem-solving mode. Station records show you as missing from temporary housing, presumed to have stowed away on an outbound transport. If you surface now, the story would be that you had second thoughts and came back, but were afraid to return to security because you thought you would be in trouble for running away. I could present myself as someone willing to take responsibility for your care while permanent arrangements are made. And the permanent arrangements? That was the harder question. Marcus didn't have a good answer for the long term, but he was beginning to understand that sometimes the most important decisions were about the next step, not the final destination. We figure that out as we go, he said honestly. Maybe we find other Vortak eventually. Maybe we don't. Maybe the refugee situation improves. Maybe it doesn't. But, in the meantime, you have a safe place to sleep, regular meals, access to education and medical care if you need it. And, you have a blind alien child disrupting your life, Zara pointed out with what sounded like gentle humor. Marcus laughed despite himself. Yeah. That too. Zara was quiet again, and Marcus could almost hear her thinking, weighing options with the same analytical precision she had applied to researching refugee facilities. If I agreed, she said finally, I would want to contribute. I would not simply accept charity. I have skills, knowledge, abilities that could be useful. What kind of skills? My people are natural engineers, Zara explained. We understand systems, patterns, connections. My blindness has enhanced my other senses significantly. I can detect vibrations, air pressure changes, electromagnetic fluctuations that most beings cannot perceive. I can diagnose mechanical problems through sound and touch that would require extensive sensor readings for others to identify. Marcus raised his eyebrows. A Vorthack engineer with enhanced senses could be incredibly valuable in maintaining the complex systems that kept a space station operational. You're saying you could actually help with my work? I am saying that I already understand this station's systems better than most of the people employed to maintain them, Zara said with quiet confidence. I have spent 47 days learning every vibration, every air current, every electrical field signature in these lower levels. I know when something is operating outside normal parameters before your sensors register the deviation. As if to demonstrate, she tilted her head and listened for a moment. Unit C7 Alpha 3 has a bearing failure in its primary circulation pump. The frequency signature shifted approximately 14 minutes ago. It will require replacement within the next 36 hours or it will cease completely. Marcus quickly activated his diagnostic scanner and pointed it toward the nearest waste reclamation unit. The readout showed green across all systems, but when he switched to predictive analysis mode, he found exactly what Zara had described: an early-stage bearing failure that his equipment estimated would require maintenance within 48 hours. How did you know that? He asked, genuinely amazed. I have been listening to that pump for weeks, Zara explained. I know its normal harmonic patterns. When the bearing began to fail, the frequency shifted in a way that my ears can detect but your equipment cannot yet measure. Marcus stared at the diagnostic readout, then at the small alien child who had just demonstrated engineering capabilities that exceeded his sophisticated sensor array. Zara, he said slowly, I think we're going to work out just fine. For the first time since he had found her, Zara smiled. It was a small, careful expression, but it transformed her face completely, revealing the child beneath the survival-hardened exterior. I would like to try, she said quietly. I would like to have a home again. Part 2, the adaptation. The process of integrating Zara into official station records proved to be less complicated than Marcus had expected. Chief Administrative Officer Reyes, a practical woman who had seen enough human misery in the refugee processing system, accepted Marcus's story about the frightened child returning voluntarily with only minimal questions. The temporary guardianship paperwork was approved within 48 hours, supported by Marcus's clean security record, stable employment, and adequate residential quarters. What Marcus hadn't anticipated was how quickly Zara would transform not just his daily routine, but his entire understanding of what it meant to build a family. The first challenge had been his apartment. Marcus had lived alone for 3 years, and his quarters reflected the precise, minimal aesthetic of someone who had learned to value function over comfort. Everything had its place, nothing was unnecessary, and personal touches were limited to a small collection of military awards and technical manuals. It was the living space of someone who had been broken and rebuilt himself according to strict specifications. Zara moved through the apartment like she was reading a technical manual, her enhanced senses cataloging every detail with clinical precision. She identified which air circulation vents were functioning optimally, which furniture pieces resonated at frequencies that indicated internal stress, and which areas had the best acoustic properties for conversation. Within hours, she had mapped the space more thoroughly than Marcus had ever bothered to. Your refrigeration unit has an inefficient cooling cycle, she mentioned casually while exploring the kitchen area. The compressor is working harder than necessary because the thermal regulation system is miscalibrated. It's probably costing you 12% more in energy consumption than optimal. Marcus, who had lived with the slightly too loud hum of his refrigerator for 3 years without really noticing it, found himself looking at his own living space through new eyes. Can you fix it? If you have the appropriate tools, yes. It's a simple adjustment to the thermal sensors. 20 minutes later, Marcus was watching in fascination as Zara, armed with a basic toolkit and guided entirely by touch and hearing, recalibrated his refrigerator to run with whisper-quiet efficiency. Her small hands moved with absolute confidence through the internal mechanisms, feeling for vibrations and listening to changes in motor rhythm that told her exactly which adjustments to make. How did you learn to do that? he asked as she replaced the access panel. All Vorthack children learn basic systems maintenance, Zara explained. Our ships spend long periods in deep space, far from repair facilities. Everyone must understand how to keep vital systems operational. Her expression grew distant. My mother was particularly skilled with environmental systems. She taught me to listen to machines, to understand what they were trying to communicate through sound and vibration. It was the first time she had volunteered personal information about her family, and Marcus sensed the delicate balance between honoring her memories and not overwhelming her with grief. She sounds like she was a good teacher. She was. Zara's voice carried quiet pride mixed with loss. She said that strong engineers don't just fix what's broken. They understand why it broke, and they make it better than it was before. The philosophy resonated with Marcus's own approach to both engineering and life. Over the following days, as they settled into an unlikely routine, he began to understand that Zara's traumatic experiences had forged her into someone who instinctively applied the same principle to everything she encountered. She didn't just adapt to circumstances, she improved them. The station's maintenance department initially regarded Zara with polite skepticism. A blind alien child accompanying one of their engineers seemed like an unnecessary complication at best, potentially dangerous at worst. That attitude lasted exactly until the first system failure she diagnosed before their sensors registered the problem. Marcus was conducting a routine inspection of the primary fusion reactor cooling systems when Zara, who had been following him silently through the maintenance corridors, suddenly stopped walking. "Mr. Marcus," she said urgently, "we need to evacuate this section immediately." Marcus paused, his scanner showing green readings across all systems. "What's wrong?" "Coolant line 7 has a microfracture that's expanding rapidly," Zara said, her voice tight with alarm. "The pressure differential is creating harmonic resonance that will reach catastrophic failure within approximately 4 minutes. Marcus's scanner still showed normal readings, but he had learned to trust Zara's abilities. He immediately triggered the emergency evacuation alarm and contacted the main engineering station to initiate coolant system shutdown procedures. 90 seconds later, coolant line 7 suffered a catastrophic rupture that flooded the entire section with superheated plasma coolant. If they had been in the corridor when it failed, they would have been killed instantly. The investigation later revealed that Zara had detected vibrations in the infrastructure that indicated metal fatigue at a level far below what station sensors could measure. Her enhanced hearing had allowed her to identify the specific harmonic signature of an expanding fracture that wouldn't have been discovered through normal maintenance procedures until it was too late to prevent the failure. Station engineer Chen, no relation to Marcus despite the shared surname, personally reviewed the incident report and requested a meeting with both Marcus and Zara. Chief Chen was a stern woman in her 60s who had been maintaining space stations since before the first human settlements in the outer colonies. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Ms. Zara," she said, addressing the child directly, "your diagnostic capabilities apparently exceed our best sensor equipment. I'm told you can identify system anomalies that our computers can't detect." Zara nodded carefully. "My species evolved enhanced senses for navigating complex environments. Combined with my blindness, these abilities have become more pronounced than normal for my people." "How pronounced?" "I can detect vibrations at frequencies and amplitudes below the threshold of most electronic sensors. I can identify changes in electromagnetic field patterns that indicate power fluctuations or component degradation. I can hear the difference between optimal mechanical operation and various categories of malfunction or inefficiency." Chief Chen studied the small alien child with the intense focus she usually reserved for critical engineering problems. "Are you interested in formal engineering training?" The question caught both Marcus and Zara by surprise. "Ma'am?" Marcus asked. "Kepler Station has a technical education program for promising young people," Chief Chen explained. "It's usually restricted to human children from station families, but exceptional circumstances sometimes require exceptional accommodations." She looked directly at Zara. "Your abilities could make you one of the most effective systems engineers in human space, with proper training. Are you interested?" Zara's clouded eyes seemed to brighten. "I would very much like to learn more about engineering, yes. Good. Report to Technical Training Base C tomorrow at 0800. Marcus, you're assigned as her supervision liaison. The program will work around your normal maintenance schedule. As they left Chief Chen's office, Marcus felt a strange mixture of pride and amazement. In less than a week, Zara had gone from a hidden refugee surviving in waste reclamation tunnels to a candidate for advanced technical training. More importantly, she had done it through her own abilities and determination, not through charity or special accommodation. Are you excited about the training program? He asked as they walked toward the residential section. Yes, Zara said, then paused. But also nervous. I have never been in a formal educational environment with other children. My parents taught me directly, usually while we were traveling between research sites. What are you nervous about? Will they accept me? The question was quiet, vulnerable. I am different from human children in many ways. Not just my species, but my experiences, my abilities, my situation. Marcus stopped walking and knelt down so he was at her eye level. Zara, in the past week you've already proven that you're more capable than most of the adult engineers on this station. Anyone who can't see past your differences to recognize your abilities doesn't deserve your concern. But, what if they don't accept you? Marcus finished gently. Then, that's their loss, and we'll figure out another path. You've already survived circumstances that would have broken most adults. A few narrow-minded students isn't going to stop you from becoming whatever you want to be. Zara considered this, then nodded slowly. You're right. I have overcome much more difficult challenges than social acceptance. Besides, Marcus added with a smile, if anyone gives you trouble, just wait until something breaks down that only you can diagnose. Amazing how quickly people change their attitudes when they need your help. The technical training program proved to be both challenging and transformative for Zara. The other students, ranging in age from 12 to 17, initially regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. Her blindness, alien physiology, and obvious intelligence created a social dynamic that none of them had experienced before. The academic work, however, came naturally to her. Zara absorbed theoretical concepts with remarkable speed and demonstrated an intuitive understanding of systems integration that impressed even the program's senior instructors. Her unique sensory abilities allowed her to approach engineering problems from angles that purely visual learners couldn't access. The breakthrough came 3 weeks into the program, when a routine exercise in power distribution analysis revealed that the training bay's electrical systems were operating with dangerous inefficiencies. The student teams were tasked with identifying optimization opportunities using standard diagnostic equipment, but none of the human students could locate the source of the anomalous readings their sensors were detecting. Zara listened to the equipment for less than 5 minutes before raising her hand. The problem is in the tertiary relay junction behind panel C7, she announced. One of the power routing modules has a failing component that's creating electromagnetic interference. It's causing cascade effects throughout the secondary distribution network. Instructor Hawthorne, a veteran engineer who had been teaching the program for 8 years, looked skeptical. MS. Zara, the diagnostic readings don't indicate any failures in that specific location. The readings are detecting the effects, not the cause, Zara explained patiently. The electromagnetic interference is subtle enough that it doesn't trigger fault alarms, but it's creating harmonic distortions that affect power quality throughout the system. To humor her, Instructor Hawthorne opened panel C7 and examined the tertiary relay junction. What he found was exactly what Zara had described, a power routing module with internal component degradation that was generating electromagnetic interference below the threshold of standard sensors. The other students stared at Zara with new respect as Instructor Hawthorne replaced the failing component and watched the system readings stabilize to optimal parameters. How did you know that? Asked Sarah Kim, a 15-year-old human student who had been among the more skeptical of Zara's abilities. I listened to the electromagnetic field patterns, Zara explained simply. Each component creates a unique signature when it operates. When something begins to fail, the signature changes in predictable ways. Your sensors can detect when the change becomes severe enough to trigger alarms, but my hearing allows me to identify problems much earlier in the failure cycle. From that day forward, Zara's classmates began to seek her input on technical problems they couldn't solve. Rather than being treated as an outsider, she became the person they turned to when standard approaches weren't working. Her alien perspective and enhanced abilities didn't make her different in a way that separated her from the group, they made her different in a way that strengthened the group's overall capabilities. Marcus watched this transformation with growing amazement and pride. Every evening, Zara would return to their shared apartment with stories about new concepts she had learned, problems she had helped solve, friendships she was developing with her classmates. The frightened, isolated child he had found in the maintenance tunnels was becoming a confident young engineer with a bright future. But it was the quieter moments that meant the most to Marcus. The evenings when Zara would sit in the apartment's main room, humming the same haunting melodies he had first heard in the tunnels while she worked on homework assignments or tinkered with small mechanical projects. The conversations over dinner where she would ask him about his military service, his prosthetic arm, his own journey from destruction to reconstruction. "Mr. Marcus," she asked one evening while they shared a meal of synthesized protein and vegetables, "when you lost your arm in the war, were you afraid that you would never be strong again?" The question caught him off guard. They had discussed his military service in general terms, but Zara had never asked such a direct question about his injury and recovery. "Yes," he answered honestly. "I was terrified that losing part of myself meant I would always be less than I had been before." "But you're not less," Zara observed. "You're different, but not diminished." "It took me a long time to understand that," Marcus said. "I spent months feeling sorry for myself, focusing on what I had lost instead of what I still had. It wasn't until I started working here, finding purpose in taking care of the systems that keep people safe, that I realized I could be stronger than I was before the injury." Zara nodded thoughtfully. "My blindness is not the same as your injury, because I was born this way. But I think the principle is similar. The weak response is to focus on limitations. The strong response is to discover capabilities you didn't know you possessed." Exactly. Marcus looked at this remarkable child who had articulated a truth that had taken him years to understand. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others. Is that a human saying? It's something I learned from experience. The part of you that makes excuses, that accepts defeat, that looks for reasons why you can't accomplish something, that's the part that holds you back. When you eliminate that weakness, when you stop accepting limitations as permanent, you become very difficult to defeat. Zara was quiet for a moment, processing this. "When I was living in the tunnels, I had to destroy the part of myself that wanted to give up. The part that was afraid, that felt sorry for myself, that wanted someone else to solve my problems. And now I know that I can survive anything," Zara said with quiet confidence. "Not because I'm not afraid, but because I've learned that fear is just information. It tells me what I need to be careful about, but it doesn't tell me what I can't accomplish." Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen as he listened to her words. This child, who had faced circumstances that would have broken most adults, had discovered the same fundamental truth that had rebuilt him after his military service. She had learned to see obstacles as problems to be solved rather than barriers to be accepted. More importantly, she had learned it while maintaining her essential kindness, her humor, her capacity for joy. The strength she had developed hadn't made her hard or cynical. It had made her resilient and compassionate. "Zara," he said carefully, "I want you to know that having you here, it's changed my life in ways I never expected." She tilted her head with interest. "How so?" "I thought I had figured out how to be strong after my injury. I thought I understood what it meant to rebuild yourself after destruction. But, watching you, seeing how you've adapted and grown, learning from your perspective, I'm discovering that there are different kinds of strength, different ways to approach problems, different ways to help people." "You saved my life," Zara pointed out. "We saved each other," Marcus corrected. "You've made me a better engineer, a better person, a better father figure than I ever thought I could be." Zara's expression softened, and she reached across the table to touch his prosthetic hand with her small fingers. "You are an excellent father figure. You listen without judgment. You help without taking control. You teach without condescending. You have shown me what it means to choose family rather than simply accepting the one you were born with." The simple statement hit Marcus with unexpected emotional force. Family. He hadn't consciously thought of their relationship in those terms, but, as soon as Zara said it, he realized it was exactly what they had built together. Not through blood or formal adoption, but through choice, mutual respect, and shared commitment to each other's well-being. "I love you too, kiddo," he said quietly. Zara's smile was radiant. "I know. I can hear it in your voice every time you say my name." Part 3, The Legacy. 6 months after Marcus first discovered Zara in the maintenance tunnels, Kepler Station faced the most serious system failure in its 20-year operational history. A cascade failure in the primary fusion reactor cooling system triggered emergency shutdowns throughout the station's critical infrastructure. Life support, artificial gravity, electromagnetic shielding, communication systems, everything that kept 50,000 beings alive in the vacuum of space, began failing in sequence. The crisis began at 0347 during the station's night cycle, when a routine maintenance robot conducting automated inspections in the reactor core detected unusual thermal readings. By 0352, those readings had spiked beyond safe parameters, triggering emergency protocols that shut down the primary reactor and shifted operations to backup power systems. The backup systems, however, weren't designed to carry the full load of station operations indefinitely. They were emergency measures meant to maintain life support and essential services for a few hours while repairs were made to the primary systems. As the backup fusion reactors strained to provide power for the massive station, secondary failures began cascading through interconnected systems. Marcus was awakened by his emergency communicator at 0356, along with every other engineer and technical specialist on the station. Chief Engineer Chen's voice was tight with controlled urgency as she issued general quarters for all maintenance personnel. "All engineering staff report to Emergency Command Center immediately. We have multiple system failures across all primary infrastructure. This is not a drill." Zara was already awake when Marcus stumbled out of his bedroom, pulling on his work coveralls. She sat in the apartment's main room, her head tilted in the listening posture he had come to recognize as her way of gathering information through senses beyond normal human perception. "The vibration patterns are wrong," she said without preamble. "The entire station's harmonic signature has changed. Multiple primary systems are offline or operating outside normal parameters." Marcus's emergency communicator chirped again with updated information. "All non-essential personnel report to designated emergency stations. Station is now operating on backup power systems. Estimated backup system sustainability, 6 hours, 43 minutes. 6 hours to fix whatever had gone wrong, or 50,000 people would be faced with life support failure in deep space." "I have to go," Marcus told Zara, checking his toolkit and diagnostic equipment. "You should report to the emergency shelter assigned to technical training students." "No," Zara said firmly. "I'm coming with you." Marcus paused in his preparations. "Zara, this could be dangerous. If we can't fix whatever's wrong, then you'll need every available resource," she interrupted. "Mr. Marcus, my diagnostic abilities are better than any sensor equipment you have. If there are subtle system problems that your instruments can't detect, you need me there to find them." She was right, and Marcus knew it. In the 6 months since she had begun working with the maintenance department, Zara had repeatedly demonstrated the ability to identify problems that sophisticated sensor arrays missed. If they were facing a crisis complex enough to threaten the entire station, her unique abilities could be critical. "Stay close to me at all times," he said finally. "If I tell you to evacuate or take shelter, you do it immediately without argument." "Understood." The emergency command center was chaos organized by necessity. Dozens of engineers, technicians, administrators, and emergency personnel filled the large chamber, their voices blending into a controlled cacophony of problem-solving and crisis management. Holographic displays showed system status readouts that painted a grim picture, critical failures spreading through infrastructure systems faster than repair teams could address them. Chief Engineer Chen stood at the center of it all, coordinating response efforts with the calm efficiency of someone who had spent decades managing complex technical emergencies. She spotted Marcus and Zara immediately. "Chen, I need you leading Team 7 investigating the secondary power distribution network," she called out. "We're seeing anomalous readings throughout the entire grid, but we can't identify the source. Take your assistant," she nodded toward Zara, "and see if those enhanced senses can find something our sensors are missing." Marcus grabbed his assigned team, 3 other engineers and 2 technicians, and headed toward the secondary power distribution center. As they moved through the station's corridors, the signs of crisis became increasingly apparent. Emergency lighting cast everything in red-tinged shadows. The normally omnipresent hum of machinery was replaced by the higher-pitched whine of backup systems operating at maximum capacity. The secondary power distribution center was a maze of massive electrical switching equipment, power routing systems, and monitoring stations that managed the flow of energy throughout the station. Under normal circumstances, it was a marvel of engineering efficiency. Now, it was a nightmare of cascading failures and incomprehensible malfunctions. "Talk to me," Marcus said to his team as they began setting up diagnostic equipment. "What are we seeing?" Senior Technician Okafor consulted his readings. "Power flow is unstable throughout the entire secondary network. We're getting fluctuations, surges, drops, and intermittent failures across multiple subsystems. It's like the entire grid is confused." "Confused?" asked Engineer Park. "How can a power grid be confused?" "The routing protocols seem to be malfunctioning," Okafor explained. "The systems that decide how to distribute power to different areas of the station are sending contradictory signals. Equipment is receiving too much power, too little power, or no power at all, apparently at random." Marcus frowned, studying the chaotic readouts on his diagnostic scanner. The patterns made no sense from an engineering perspective. Power distribution systems were designed with multiple redundancies and failsafes specifically to prevent the kind of cascading chaos they were witnessing. "Zara," he said, "can you make sense of this?" "What are you hearing?" Zara had been moving quietly through the power distribution center, her enhanced senses focused on the massive electrical equipment around them. She paused near a central switching station, her head tilted in intense concentration. "The problem isn't random," she said after a moment. "There's a pattern to the failures, but it's very subtle. The power routing systems are receiving conflicting instructions from 2 different sources." "2 sources?" Engineer Park looked confused. "All routing instructions come from the central control system." "No," Zara said firmly. "There's something else sending signals to the power grid. Something that's interfering with the normal control protocols." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the emergency lighting. "Are you saying this is sabotage?" "I don't think it's intentional," Zara said carefully. "But there's definitely an external signal source that's disrupting normal operations. The interference is sophisticated enough to mimic legitimate control signals, which is why your sensors aren't identifying it as a problem." Senior Technician Okafor activated his communicator. "Command Center, this is Team 7. We may have identified the source of the power grid failures. We're detecting possible signal interference from an unknown external source." Chief Engineer Chen's response was immediate. "Clarify external source. Are we talking about equipment failure or deliberate interference?" "Unknown at this time," Marcus replied, taking over the communication. "Our analysis suggests something is sending signals to the power grid that conflict with normal routing protocols, but we haven't identified the source or determined whether it's malicious. Keep investigating. If this is sabotage, we need to know immediately." Marcus looked around at his team, then at Zara. "Can you track the interference signals? Figure out where they're coming from?" Zara nodded, her expression focused with the intensity he had learned to associate with her most serious problem-solving efforts. "I need to move through different areas of the station to triangulate the signal source. The interference has a specific electromagnetic signature that I should be able to trace." "Do it." "Everyone else, start documenting the specific nature of the interference so we can figure out how to block it." For the next 90 minutes, Marcus coordinated his team's investigation while Zara moved through the station like a bloodhound following a scent trail only she could detect. Her enhanced senses allowed her to track electromagnetic signatures through the complex maze of infrastructure and interference that filled a space station's operational environment. Marcus's communicator buzzed regularly with updates from other teams. The fusion reactor cooling system failures that had started the crisis were proving more complicated than initially expected. Multiple redundant systems had failed simultaneously, suggesting either catastrophic equipment deterioration or some kind of coordinated attack on the station's infrastructure. At 0523, Zara returned to the power distribution center with information that changed everything. "I found the source," she announced without preamble. "The interference signals are coming from section G14 in the lower maintenance levels. But they're not being transmitted by equipment or people. They're geological." "Geological?" Marcus stared at her. "Zara, we're in space. There's no geology here." "Not terrestrial geology," she clarified. "But something in section G14 is generating electromagnetic pulses that match no known technology signature. The patterns are too regular to be natural phenomena, but they don't match any artificial signal protocols in your databases." Engineer Park looked skeptical. "Are you suggesting we're being interfered with by alien technology?" "I'm reporting what my senses detect," Zara said calmly. "There is an unknown source generating electromagnetic interference that is disrupting multiple station systems. The source is located in section G14. The signal characteristics do not match any known technology." Marcus felt pieces of a puzzle beginning to form in his mind. "Zara, when we first met, you mentioned that your parents were studying gravitational anomalies before their accident. What kind of anomalies?" Zara's expression grew thoughtful. "They had discovered what they believed to be artificial gravitational disturbances in this sector of space. Patterns that suggested the presence of advanced technology, possibly from a previously unknown civilization. And their ship was destroyed in an explosion." "Yes. In the engineering section, where they were analyzing their gravitational data." "What if," Marcus said slowly, "the explosion wasn't an accident? What if they found something that reacted badly to being studied?" The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If Zara's parents had discovered some kind of alien artifact or technology, and if that technology was somehow connected to the current system failures, then Kepler Station wasn't just facing technical problems, it was facing contact with something completely outside human experience. "We need to report this to Command Center immediately," Senior Technician Okafor said. "No," Marcus said firmly. "First we need to investigate section G14 and confirm what we're dealing with. If we're wrong, we look like idiots who blame system failures on alien intervention. If we're right, we need to have actionable information before we create station-wide panic." "Mr. Marcus," Zara said quietly, "if my parents' research was correct, if there is advanced alien technology in this sector, it may not be hostile. The interference patterns suggest something that's responding to the station's presence, not attacking it." "Responding how?" "Like it's trying to communicate." The maintenance corridors of section G14 were among the oldest and least visited areas of Kepler Station. Built during the original construction 20 years ago, they housed backup systems and emergency equipment that were rarely accessed during normal operations. As Marcus and his team made their way through the narrow passages, guided by Zara's uncanny ability to navigate in complete darkness, the electromagnetic interference that had been subtle throughout the rest of the station became increasingly pronounced. Their diagnostic equipment began registering signal patterns that defied easy classification. The readings suggested massive electromagnetic activity, but not from any technology in their databases. The signatures were too complex, too organized, too intelligent. "It's stronger here," Zara said as they approached the deepest section of G14. "The source is very close. Maybe 50 meters ahead." Marcus checked his equipment readouts and confirmed that they were approaching the limits of the station's outer hull. Beyond the walls around them lay nothing but vacuum and cosmic radiation. Whatever was generating the signals had to be either embedded in the station's structure itself or "Oh my God," breathed Engineer Park, staring at his scanner display. The reading showed a massive electromagnetic signature located approximately 30 meters beyond the station's hull. Something large, complex, and obviously artificial was positioned in space directly adjacent to Kepler's station, generating the signals that were disrupting their systems. "There's something out there," Marcus said, his voice tight with amazement and concern. "Something big." "Not something," Zara corrected softly. "Someone." They reached the end of the maintenance corridor to find an area that clearly hadn't been accessed in years. Dust covered every surface, and the air had the stale quality of spaces long forgotten. But, mounted in the far wall was an observation port, a thick transparisteel window that provided a view into the space surrounding the station. Marcus approached the port and looked out into the star-filled darkness beyond. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Floating in space perhaps 100 meters from the station was a ship unlike anything in human design philosophy. It was massive, easily twice the size of the largest human vessels, but its form seemed to flow like liquid metal frozen in time. Graceful curves and impossible angles combined in a design that was both beautiful and utterly alien. And it was clearly very, very old. Along the ship's hull, patterns of light pulsed in complex rhythms that matched exactly the electromagnetic interference their equipment had been detecting. "It's been here the entire time," Marcus said in amazement. 20 years of station operations, and no one ever noticed it. "It's cloaked," Zara explained. "Not perfectly invisible, but using technology that makes it very difficult to detect unless you know exactly what to look for. My parents' gravitational research would have been able to identify the disturbances it creates in local spacetime. And, when they discovered it, they tried to study it. Their analysis apparently activated some kind of response protocol." Zara's voice was sad but not bitter. The explosion that destroyed their ship may have been the artifact's attempt to prevent them from revealing its location. Marcus stared at the alien vessel, his mind racing through the implications. "But it's not attacking us now. It's trying to communicate. The electromagnetic signals started when our primary fusion reactor went offline," Zara observed. "I think the artifact detected our emergency situation and is attempting to provide assistance. By interfering with our power grid? By trying to interface with our technology using methods it doesn't understand or incompatible with our systems," Zara corrected. "It's like, imagine trying to help someone by speaking to them in a language they don't understand. Your intentions are good, but the communication fails." Engineer Park activated his communicator with trembling hands. "Command Center, this is Team 7. We have a situation. We need Chief Engineer Chen and Station Commander Morrison down here immediately." "Define situation, Team 7. Marcus took the communicator. "Chief, we've identified the source of our system failures. We're also going to need to contact the Xenoarchaeology Division of the Colonial Scientific Authority. Immediately." The next 8 hours transformed Kepler Station from a routine commercial spaceport into the site of humanity's first confirmed contact with advanced alien technology. Chief Engineer Chen, Station Commander Morrison, and hastily summoned experts from the Colonial Scientific Authority worked with Marcus and Zara to establish the first tentative communication with the artifact. The process was painstaking and frustrating. The alien technology operated on principles that human science could barely comprehend, using electromagnetic frequencies and mathematical concepts that pushed the limits of their understanding. But, gradually, with Zara's enhanced senses providing critical insight into the artifact's signal patterns, they began to decode the basics of its communication attempts. What they learned was astonishing. The artifact was indeed a ship, but not a vessel in any sense humans understood. It was a repository, a massive library and research station created by a civilization that had vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago. Its purpose was to study gravitational phenomena throughout the galaxy, documenting and preserving information about cosmic evolution for future discovery. Zara's parents had been correct in their analysis of gravitational anomalies. Their research had identified the artifact's presence, and their attempts to study it had triggered automatic protocols designed to protect the repository's location. The explosion that destroyed their ship had been a defensive response, but not a malicious one. When Kepler Station's emergency had begun, the artifact's monitoring systems had detected the crisis and attempted to provide assistance. Its electromagnetic signals had been crude attempts to interface with human technology and offer solutions to the station's power failures. The incompatibility between alien and human systems had caused the very problems the artifact was trying to solve. But, now, with understanding beginning to bridge the gap between human and alien technology, the artifact was offering something unprecedented: access to millions of years of scientific knowledge accumulated by a civilization far in advance of humanity's current development. The implications are staggering, Dr. Sarah Martinez, the lead xenoarchaeologist from the Colonial Scientific Authority, explained to the assembled station leadership. This single artifact contains more scientific knowledge than humanity has accumulated in its entire history. Physics, biology, engineering, astronomy, disciplines we haven't even imagined yet. Station Commander Morrison, a practical man who had spent 30 years managing commercial spaceports, struggled with the magnitude of what they were facing. Dr. Martinez, I understand the scientific significance, but my primary concern is station safety. Can we establish stable communication with this repository? Can we prevent further interference with our systems? We believe so, Dr. Martinez replied. The young lady here, she nodded toward Zara, has been instrumental in developing communication protocols that both sides can understand. Her unique sensory abilities and her intuitive understanding of electromagnetic patterns have bridged gaps that would have taken our best xenolinguistics teams months to resolve. All eyes turned to Zara, who sat quietly beside Marcus, her clouded eyes seeming to focus on something beyond the conference room walls. In the 8 hours since first contact, she had become the crucial link between human and alien technology, translating concepts that existed at the edge of both civilizations' understanding. Zara, Station Commander Morrison said gently, can you help us establish permanent communication with the artifact? Something that won't interfere with station operations? Zara nodded slowly. The repository is eager to share its knowledge, but it needs to understand our technological limitations. I've been teaching it about human electromagnetic frequencies and power distribution systems. It's learning to communicate in ways that won't disrupt our infrastructure. And, in return? It wants to learn about us, Zara said simply. About human civilization, our science, our culture, our goals. It's been alone for millions of years, waiting for someone capable of meaningful communication. We represent the first contact it has had with an active civilization in longer than our species has existed. Dr. Martinez leaned forward with excitement. This could be the beginning of a scientific revolution that transforms human understanding of the universe. Access to millions of years of accumulated knowledge could advance our technology by centuries in a matter of decades. Assuming we can handle that level of advancement responsibly, Marcus interjected. The repository's knowledge includes technologies that could be incredibly dangerous if misused. The repository is aware of that concern, Zara said. It has protocols for gradual knowledge transfer, designed to prevent civilizations from advancing faster than their wisdom can accommodate. It wants to help us grow, not destroy ourselves through premature access to technologies we're not ready to manage responsibly. Station Commander Morrison sat back in his chair, the weight of decision heavy on his shoulders. So we're talking about establishing Kepler Station as a permanent research facility for human-alien cooperation? That's one possibility, Dr. Martinez agreed. The Colonial Scientific Authority would certainly support such an arrangement. The research opportunities are beyond anything we've ever imagined. There's something else to consider, Marcus said. Zara's parents died discovering this repository. She's the only surviving member of a species that apparently has natural abilities that make her uniquely suited for this kind of communication with alien technology. That makes her irreplaceable. The statement hung in the air with uncomfortable weight. Everyone in the room understood the implication. Zara had become the most important person in human space, the only individual capable of facilitating communication with an alien intelligence that possessed knowledge that could transform human civilization. I understand the responsibility, Zara said quietly. I also understand the risks. But this is what my parents died trying to accomplish. They believed that knowledge and understanding could bridge any gap between civilizations. I want to honor their work by helping to build that bridge. Marcus felt pride and concern war in his chest. The small, frightened child he had found in the maintenance tunnels had become someone whose decisions would shape the future of human development. The strength she had developed through surviving impossible circumstances had prepared her for responsibilities that no one her age should have to carry. The repository has made a proposal, Zara continued. It wants to establish a permanent research partnership with humanity, but it insists on certain conditions. The knowledge transfer must be gradual and controlled. The research must be conducted by individuals who demonstrate both intellectual capability and ethical responsibility. And she paused, it wants me to serve as the primary liaison during the initial phases of cooperation. Zara, Marcus said carefully, you don't have to take on that kind of responsibility. You're still a child. You deserve to have a normal life, to grow up without carrying the weight of interspecies diplomacy. Zara turned toward him with the small smile he had learned to recognize as her expression of gentle disagreement. Mr. Marcus, you taught me that strength comes from choosing what to sacrifice and what to preserve. I choose to use my abilities to help both humans and the repository achieve something remarkable together. But what about your own dreams? Your own future? This is my future, Zara said with quiet certainty. I want to be an engineer, to understand how systems work, to solve problems that help people. What could be more fitting than helping to solve the problem of how two very different civilizations can work together? Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. The Colonial Scientific Authority would ensure that Zara receives the finest education available, tailored to her unique role and abilities. She would be working with the most brilliant minds in human space, while also maintaining her liaison responsibilities with the repository. And she would remain here on Kepler Station? Marcus asked. If that's what she wants, Dr. Martinez confirmed. The station would become humanity's first permanent xenoarchaeological research facility. Zara would grow up as part of the team that's literally writing the first chapter of human-alien cooperation. Marcus looked at Zara, seeing in her face the same quiet determination that had allowed her to survive alone in the maintenance tunnels. She had made her decision, and he recognized that trying to change her mind would be both futile and wrong. Okay, he said finally. But she's still my daughter. Whatever responsibility she takes on, whatever role she plays in this research, she comes home to our apartment every night. She still does her homework, still helps me fix broken refrigerators, still has time to be a kid. Zara's smile was radiant. Always. You will always be my family, Mr. Marcus. The repository understands the importance of emotional bonds. It actually considers human family structures to be one of our species' most interesting evolutionary adaptations. Station Commander Morrison stood up, his expression mixing amazement with resignation. Very well. I'll contact Colonial Command and inform them that Kepler Station is officially requesting designation as a xenoarchaeological research facility. Dr. Martinez, I assume your people will be arriving soon? Already en route, Dr. Martinez confirmed. Along with enough funding to upgrade every system on this station and expand it to accommodate a permanent research population. As the meeting broke up and the participants filed out to begin the complex process of transforming a commercial spaceport into humanity's first alien research facility, Marcus and Zara remained behind in the now empty conference room. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked one more time. I'm sure, Zara replied. Mr. Marcus, 6 months ago I was a frightened refugee hiding in waste reclamation tunnels. Today I'm helping to establish communication between human and alien civilizations. That transformation happened because you taught me that the weak part of yourself is the part that accepts limitations as permanent. And you taught me that strength isn't just about overcoming your own limitations, Marcus replied. It's about using your abilities to help others overcome theirs. They sat together in comfortable silence, looking out through the conference room's viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere in that darkness, an ancient alien repository waited patiently for the next phase of a cooperation that would reshape both civilizations. Do you think your parents would be proud? Marcus asked softly. Zara's clouded eyes seemed to brighten. I think they would be amazed. They spent their lives studying the mysteries of the universe, hoping to find evidence that we're not alone among the stars. They discovered something far more wonderful, proof that knowledge and understanding can bridge any gap between different kinds of intelligence. And their daughter became the person who actually built that bridge. We built it together, Zara corrected. You, me, the repository, all the people who chose to see opportunity instead of threat, cooperation instead of conflict. She paused, listening to something beyond normal human perception. The repository just signaled. It's ready to begin the first formal knowledge exchange. Marcus stood up and offered Zara his hand. Ready to make history? Ready to honor my family and build a future where strength means helping each other grow, Zara replied, taking his hand with her small fingers. Together, they walked out of the conference room and toward a future that neither human nor alien civilization could have imagined alone. The blind alien child who had been abandoned in a spaceport had become the bridge between worlds, proving that sometimes the greatest strength comes from understanding that being different doesn't mean being alone. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others. But the person who uses their strength to lift others up can never be forgotten by history. In the months and years that followed, Kepler Station became a symbol of what was possible when different kinds of intelligence chose cooperation over conflict. Zara grew up as both daughter and diplomat, engineer and translator, the living proof that families could be chosen and futures could be built by anyone willing to sacrifice their limitations for the sake of something greater than themselves. The repository's knowledge transformed human technology gradually and responsibly, guided by principles of ethical development that honored both species' values. And, at the center of it all, a blind Vortak girl and her adoptive human father continued to demonstrate that the strongest bonds are forged not through accident of birth, but through deliberate choice to care for each other regardless of the cost. The stars, it turned out, had been waiting all along for someone brave enough to listen.